Morning.
Hi, everybody. If you're joining us, welcome to another executive education podcast, I guess, for the University of Lincoln, Lincoln International Business School. So my name is Tracy Millar, and I'm joined by Joe Wilson from Fill the Gap Marketing. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to take you through 6 stages, really, of areas that we think you could work on and focus on to ensure that your marketing and your focus of your business is as best as it can be. We're going to follow that with Joe giving us 2 easy, low-cost ideas that you could implement right now today, and then we will both be available for questions.
So my role here is the practical advice, really. So the way it's going to work, hopefully, is Tracy's going to give you some theory, and then my slide's going to give you a little practical tip about how you can implement that theory into your business.
Okay, so first of all, we thought we'd better introduce ourselves. So my name is Tracy Millar. I'm a senior lecturer and a program leader at the University of Lincoln at the Business School. Prior to joining the Business School, I think approximately 4 years ago now, I worked in industry for over 25 years. So I worked in the textile industry, and then for the majority of my career, I worked in FMCG, which is fast-moving consumer goods, the products that we see and buy all the time in supermarkets, etc. And I've always worked in marketing and or consumer insights, and I've worked in UK roles, across European roles, and also working on brands globally.
I am Managing Director of Fill the Gap Marketing. We are an outsourced marketing team, so we work with small businesses who don't have their own marketing department, and we write and implement marketing plans for them. I'm a chartered marketer. I just wanted to put that up there because just to give you the peace of mind, really, that I've got plenty of experience. It shows that I've got, basically, that's why I've got all these wrinkles, lots of qualifications and lots of experience in marketing, that hopefully I can share some of that with you guys to help us to survive and thrive and bounce back from the COVID situation that we've all found ourselves in.
So we're going to start by just being really clear about what we're considering as marketing. So the Chartered Institute of Marketing considers that it is a management process which identifies, anticipates, and supplies customer requirements both efficiently and effectively. Now, a lot of people assume that marketing is just the advertising or the selling bit, but that really isn't the whole story. It's a key discipline around the management of your business, and it's making sure that you are producing the right goods and services, and you're matching the needs and desires of consumers, and hopefully even exceeding their expectations. And that means that marketing is really central to your business performance. It's whether you're a large company and you have separate departments doing the marketing, or whether you're a small business and you're doing it all yourself, or only a few of you. It's really addressing the most important fundamental aspects of your business. It's understanding your customers, it's understanding your competitors, and making sure that you get the right product in the right place at the right time to the right people. And throughout, since marketing first really came to fruition as a department or a separate focus, we know that without marketing, you cannot get to the core of your customer. You cannot get to really understand their needs, their wants, and matching or exceeding what your competitors are doing. Now, in recent years, we've seen an explosion in digital. So we know that digital and mobile technology has massively impacted all aspects of our lives as consumers and customers, but also as businesses. And so what we're hoping to do over the next few minutes is take you through some ways that you can implement every element of the marketing process to maximize your business potential.
I just like this slide, really, because I think I want to reiterate what Tracy says, that marketing is a process. It's really important to understand that, and we're going to walk you through some of that today. But I think it's really key to understand that the customer should be at the very centre of that process. And for me, marketing is all about how well you can serve your customers profitably, and it's that balance that you're trying to achieve in order to successfully grow your business. So just before we really kick off into the marketing, we wanted to acknowledge that at the moment, obviously the situation may seem precarious, but whilst we acknowledge that it's a horrible time and it's been very difficult for many people on many levels, actually within this, there is an opportunity. We can actually use this as a pause to think to ourselves, are we actually heading in the direction that we want to be going in? It's actually an opportunity to think, am I sure I want to keep going in this direction? Take stock of the situation. And that's a lot of what marketing is understanding where we want to go. That's really key. So actually use this time now to pause and think, right, where do I want to go? And we're going to help you work that out now over the next 25 minutes.
Thanks for the time check. Okay, so the very, very first thing you need to do is have a plan. Now, in the true marketing of advertising, there is lots of evidence, both theoretically and practically, that the more you plan and consider any advertising operations you're doing, the more likely you are to be effective and efficient in what you're doing. Now, that fits not just for your advertising type of marketing, but every element of your business. So taking on board what Joe's just said about pausing for a moment, we recommend that you stop and sort of purposefully consider the direction that your business is going in and the results that you want to achieve. Because the more you're able to focus on that and have real clarity of where you're going and what you're doing, I promise you the more effective it will be. Now, that sounds really simple, but actually just sitting and thinking about it isn't necessarily as easy as it sounds. And it might be that you want to do this as a group, even if it's your own business. You might want to do this with friends or colleagues or family. Now, there are a number of tools and techniques that you can use that can help you with this. So I'm sure you've all heard of the SWOT analysis, which is considering the strengths and weaknesses of your business, so the internal elements, and then the opportunities and threats, the external forces. So whether it's something in your environment, in your customer groups, or with your competitors, that's an opportunity or a threat. Now, another way you can break down the planning is through a pestle analysis, which is considering any political issues, any economic, my mind's gone now, political, economic, technological, legal, environmental. So you're really considering all the different elements that are out there and how you might consider whether they are again offering an opportunity or a threat to you, and therefore what you can do about that. And then finally, there's another analysis called the Porter's 5 Forces, where you consider your position as you are now and what the threats are of new entrants in to compete with you, the threats or power balance between yourself and your suppliers. Again, the same relationship, but with your buyers. Threats of substitutes or alternative products or services coming along that consumers might want to buy instead, and any existing rivalry intentions there might be in the market that you exist in. So really using any or one of those tools will start to help you think about what situation you're in, what your competition is like, what you're facing into, what your key company objectives should then be, and also budget. So what budget are you working with? So lots of things to consider within a planning process that really should be at the very start of what you then go on to do with your marketing.
Wow, Tracy's basically covered one of the biggest elements of marketing in one slide there, which, as you can tell, was quite a difficult thing to do. So probably the biggest practical thing that I'm going to help you with today is on our Fill the Gap Marketing website, we have got a Fill the Gap Marketing Academy, and at the end we're going to give you the link to that. It's normally a chargeable service, but we want to help everyone bounce back. So there's a code at the end, Lincoln. If you put that code in, you can have the entire marketing framework, which walks you through the process that Tracy's just mentioned with worksheets. So don't worry too much about taking notes on what Tracy just said there, because if you want to go there, you can download that, and there's an entire marketing framework available to you there. If you don't want to do that and you take one thing away, please set yourself some goals. I speak to business owners all the time in terms of what do they want to achieve. That's one of the first things I ask, because we're here to help them achieve it. So what do you want to do? And so many people haven't got anything specific or measurable that they want to achieve. So I would really encourage you to set yourself some specific measurable targets, because if you don't know what they are, how do you know whether you've achieved them? So just spend some time thinking about what you want them to be as well is really helpful. So that's another top tip.
Okay, our second area for you to focus on is about really understanding and knowing your target market, which is the real heart of any marketing strategy as you start to pull that together. So it's commonly known as STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And as a whole, they're just big words, and they can sound a bit overwhelming. But ultimately, think about that STP is about getting the right customers for your product, and or considering what products do I need to reach those consumers. And it's a broad framework that you work through, and you're just making sure that you're heading in the right direction. You're moving towards the goals that Joe just mentioned you're setting. So if you think about each of these in turn, you would start with segmentation. You're going to look at all the customers that are available to you, and you segment them into groups. So it's like carving up a cake, a pie chart, and you're looking at grouping them into areas where they have shared characteristics. So those characteristics have to be meaningful for your business. So there can be demographic characteristics such as age, or male, female, etc. Or they could be a geographic segmentation. So if you are working in Lincolnshire and you want to reach out, maybe you want to highlight specific geographies first. It could be attitudinal, so that people have an attitude towards something. So maybe, for example, people who are more inclined to be engaged by innovation, so be an early adopter of that. Or any other characteristic that is definable that you can use. So once you have all those segments, you then work through understanding which you want to target. So what you're going to do is review the appeal of each of those segments, and choosing the ones. So you're not going to target the whole pie. You're going to choose the segments or the slices that are most interesting. Now, quite often that's the most profitable segments for you, but it could be anything else. It could be the most easy to convert from "I was thinking about it" to "buying it now." It could be how easy they are to reach through a certain cheaper form of communication. So whatever closest matches you and your organization and your goals and aims, then they are the targets you then choose within that segmentation to work on. And then the positioning is considering both your business and your target audiences, and understanding what you want your brand image to be and what effect you want it to have on consumers. So you're considering, what do I want them to think, feel, and do? What do I want them to consider and know about me and my business? So what do I want to be standing for that will engage them, that will get their attention, and will make them want to engage with you through a purchase? So this helps you identify the most valuable customers, your products and services, and how you're using those. And you're starting to get to the point of understanding what sorts of messages you want to give them. So by the end of this phase, you have done some thinking and you've done some strategizing, and you should be very confident in how easily it's going to be for you to effectively and efficiently sell yourselves, your business, your products, your services in an efficient way. And just to highlight to you that this is an iterative process in a way, and it's something that we would recommend that businesses set time aside to do. reasonably frequently now, whether that's yearly or twice a year, whatever works for you. But it's about considering that there are challenges for your consumers and customers, and that those challenges and changes might change. So we are in unprecedented times. I keep hearing that phrase. And your customer demands and needs might be changing. And ultimately, your business is going to keep being successful if you keep meeting and potentially exceeding their expectations. So when you're considering these segments and these targets, start thinking about your customers. Has the pandemic affected them in any way in terms of their perceptions or their mindset? Have they required access to new sorts of products, or even just the same products but in new sorts of ways? Are your competitors doing something different? We always recommend that you would look outside as well as inward. And have you had to use any kind of new technology? So there are lots of researchers out there that are published. Nielsen and Kantar are two big data agencies who do a lot of research and will publish useful information around consumer trends and the like on their websites. But what we found is that when they're doing this research, they are giving us lots of valuable information. However, although you might consider that you've had to reach your customers in new ways, please don't panic, because when we look specifically at the theories around consumer behavior, and there's lots and lots of research tracking consumer behavior, there is significant evidence that consumer behavior does not change overnight, and quite often to shift people's fundamental behaviors can take a whole generation or more. Now, recent research, and I would direct you to The Drum and Samuel Scott, who is a writer. He wrote a very good article about research tracking the effects of the Spanish flu and other global events such as world wars, etc. And they looked at short-term shifts in behavior, and it was not always true that those short-term shifts stuck with consumers, and that a percentage of consumers did go back to their old behaviors and old ways, but maybe with minor tweaks. So it's starting to make you aware, or to raise your awareness that you need to be constantly tracking and considering this.
Just going back to what Tracy was saying about segment, target and positioning, really. Again, just referring to lots of the business owners that I speak to, when I say who's your target market, people say, oh, well, everyone. Lots and lots of people think everyone can buy their product or service, or everybody in a certain industry, for example. But what I would really encourage you to do is think very carefully and actually follow that segment, targeting and positioning process that Tracy mentioned. Because if you do try to talk to everyone, it's very easy to end up talking to no one, because no one will hear you. If you talk very specifically to a particular type of customer, and then you focus on their wants and needs, and you start talking about their problems in their language and addressing them, they are far more likely to hear your marketing messages and notice you and your business and how you can solve their problems than if you're just talking generically. So definitely target your marketing. And again, don't worry too much. If you want to download the Academy at the end, it talks you through how to do this process for your business.
Okay, now I'm sure that many of you are already aware of what's called the 4 Ps, otherwise known as the marketing mix. And these are basically the 4 key decision areas that you must manage in order to make sure that you're meeting or exceeding your customers' expectations, and ideally better than the competition. Now, taking you through each of those quite briefly, your product, you should really understand what that is, but also what it does. So you might have a tangible product, something your customers are buying and they can hold, or an intangible product such as a service where it's an experience that they have instead. But be really clear on what need or want that product is fulfilling, and have a clear grasp of what is making it distinctive versus the competition, because you want to make sure that consumers are thinking about you and have a real recognition of what you're offering them. And that is true for B2B2C, so business to consumer marketing, But it's also true for B2B, business to business marketing. So whether you're selling ball bearings that go on to other industrial uses, whether you're selling car servicing or a chocolate bar, they all have a product and have to understand that. The second element is place. Now, one thing that people automatically think of when they think of place is where I'm retailing or delivering this, how consumers and customers are accessing my product. But it isn't just about that. It's also about the entire route to market, from manufacturing right through to reaching the customer. So when you're thinking about place, think about, well, how am I manufacturing or creating this product, or how am I buying it in? What changes am I making to it? And how am I delivering it out? And is there any efficiency you could make in that process? So could you more effectively deliver the entire route to market to get to the right place? And do you need to consider the new locations? So consider the fact that the locations that customers are accessing your products in right now might even have changed over the last 12 weeks. So I know in lockdown in my town, I have seen lots of small high street businesses convert to phone orders or online orders. They've started delivering. They've started making shifts within place to enable them to reach the same consumers. And for the most part, in my town, for example, butchers and bakers have reached a whole new set of consumers. Moving on from that, we've got price. Now, price is the most significant element in some ways, because it's the only time you're going to generate income for the business. Everything else, so making the product, getting it to the place and promoting it, is a cost to your business. Price is the income generation. So you want to think about what the optimal price point is for the products you're offering, and think about, are you low volume, high cost, high volume, low cost, or where in the middle do you sit on that scale? And be really clear on what the quality expectation is from consumers for the price, because you don't want to go too cheap or too expensive to make people question whether it's worth buying the product. And there is lots of evidence that being too cheap can also dramatically impact on consumers' expectations and perceptions, because, well, it can't be any good if it's only that price. So you don't have to downgrade your product, you just have to be clear on why it sits at that price. And finally, promotion is the part where you start to do what people traditionally think of as marketing. So this is where you're going to work out how you disseminate all the information that you've got on your product, your price, your place, to the target market that you've segmented and targeted and positioned earlier. Where are they is part of marketing. So where will I find them? Where will they be most likely to see my advertising? As well as the whole area of thinking about how am I going to most effectively get that message across to them? So the two things that we really recommend across these four areas is harmony and consistency. If you have true harmony and you're talking in the right way and in a consistent way, a consistent voice around your product, then consumers are less likely to get confused and less likely to misattribute any advertising they see for your product to a competitor product. So going on to Joe's going to give you some good ideas.
Well, I mean, there's so much you can say about all of that, but we've only got 30 minutes, so I've just thought I'd pick out price, because people often forget that price is actually a key strategic marketing decision. So just a couple of ideas. This sounds so obvious, but not everyone thinks about this. But in terms of your marketing, have you actually looked at all your products and services, worked out which is the most profitable to your business, and decided to spend your marketing effort, time and budget on actually trying to promote that one? Because that sounds so obvious, but seriously worth doing. The other side to that coin, though, is you might want to, still on that one actually, Tracy, before you, the alternative to actually promoting your most profitable product is you might want to promote one that isn't quite as profitable, like a lower cost one, for instance, if you know that you can then capture some data, for instance, and upsell them to your profitable one. So actually using that kind of pricing as a strategic tool. Sorry to trace the next slide. This is very much related to the current situation where people are very nervous about spending money, potentially. So have a think about how could you encourage them to feel a little bit safer, and make it easier for them to buy? Because I would say that easier it is for people to buy from you, whether that's to do with the process or whatever, the more likely they are to do it. So if you could offer them a payment plan, for instance, or credit terms, just ways of spreading the cost, or perhaps package your goods and services differently to offer a value product. So this isn't by any means offering any less value to yourself. So don't do yourself a disservice, but rather than offering a premium product, maybe you could offer a value product for people. So just have a think about whether there's any way that you can make your product more affordable and easier for people to buy. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, we're on to hint and tip number 4, which is about understanding your customers. So you have segmented, you've worked out which targets are the most appropriate. So within those target audiences, you need to make clear to yourselves who is involved in the buying decision and who do you need to communicate with. And there are 2 elements to this. One is the decision-making process, the DMP, and the other is the decision-making unit, the DMU. So the DMP is made up of 7 steps. Now, for the majority of the time, we are all making decisions about what we choose to buy or engage with, but for the most part, we're doing it subconsciously. So we don't recognize that we're going through these stages. However, if we're buying a more high involvement product, which will be something that's maybe either more expensive or more of a significant purchase in your life, maybe your first house, your first car, obvious ones, then they're much higher involvement. And as I talk you through these stages, you're probably going to recognize what you've done. So the first stage of the decision-making process is that you recognize you have a need. You think, oh yes, you know, I need a car now to get me to wherever, or we finally saved the deposit, we're going to buy our first house. The second element is that you search for information. So you're looking for all the information you can gather to support and help you make that purchase decision. Then at the third stage, you're doing a pre-purchase evaluation of all of those alternatives. So based on maybe a criteria that you've got, you're considering how I'm going to evaluate and choose between this selection I have available. And then you purchase. So that's number 4. After you purchased it, you consume the product. Then you go to post-consumption evaluation and then divestment, where you finally get rid of that. So if you can think about buying your first house, you can probably recognize what you did at each of those stages. But if it's about buying a chocolate bar from the shop, then you are still going through those phases, but your brain is doing it much more subconsciously, and you're moving through that very quickly. So think about the products and the services that you are offering your customers. Are they going to be more recognizably working consciously through that process, or are you going to need to signal to them at a very subconscious level what you need from them and what you're offering, so that they can move to that decision very quickly? And then, especially if you're in a business-to-business organization, you need to be really clear on the decision-making unit. So these are understanding who is involved in the buying decision across the organization. So there are some key people in there. There are the people who are going to use the product that you're selling to them. There are people who can exert some influence. There are people who are going to decide, and people who hold the key almost to the gate, the gatekeeper. And you need to be really clear who you need to talk to in the organization and at what time it's best to talk to them. So just consider all of these key questions that I've got on the slide here. Who is participating in and or influencing the decision-making process to get to buy your product?
Conscious of time, but I'll just very quickly wanted to point out that doing a customer survey is something that I would highly recommend. One of the first things to do, going back to that very first slide about understanding your customers, is absolutely key. And at the moment, everything is magnified. It's really important to listen and understand people's changing needs, as we've said. So if you're not aware, I would definitely recommend this free tool, which is surveymonkey.com, free survey tool that you can use. Okay, we're on the home stretch. We've got 5 and 6 left.
So before we go into the elements I want you to consider around staying visible, I just really liked this cartoon because it really highlights that as business owners or managers in a business, we live and breathe our products, our services. We put them at the heart of everything that we do, and therefore it's really hard to think that most, if not all, of our consumers, even the most loyal consumers, don't live and breathe our products in the same way. They have many other things going on, and that brands and products and services are not really high on the agenda right now, especially in the current economic and social climate. So in order to really get across to you that we need to remain visible with those consumers so that when it comes to the point they consider you, you're there for them, lots of research in recent years has suggested that brand loyalists are of little overall value to most companies, and that most larger organizations, most big branded organizations, are focusing on gaining new customers, even if they're light or infrequent buyers. And there's a book that's very good called How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp, which I definitely recommend. And that really evidences that multiple times across multiple categories and multiple sorts of products. So if we know that people are relatively unloyal and not really considering you, think about the fact that we have for each product that we buy what's called an evoked set of brands. So whether we're talking clothing, for example, or a chocolate bar, there'll be a set of brands that we are aware of. Now, within that, there'll be 2, 3, or 4 that are in our consideration set. So, for example, in clothing terms, there's lots of brands that I'm aware of, such as Hollister and Superdry and Chanel and Louis Vuitton. They're in my evoked set. I'm aware that they sell clothing and accessories, but they are not in my consideration set for a number of reasons. And I am probably not in their target audience either. So although I will see some of their messaging, that messaging isn't meant for me. So when you consider your product, you want to get into the consideration set, which is that the alternatives that I am going to consider for purchase. So when I get to the chocolate fixture, which 2 or 3 am I scanning the fixture for that are the ones that I'm most likely to buy? If the consumer doesn't know who you are, so if you haven't advertised, you haven't communicated to them, and they're not aware of you, you are in their inert set, which means you're unknown to them. If you're unknown, they're not going to consider you for purchase. So you must stay visible, because that will enable you to stay prominent in memory and get the opportunity to sell your product to those customers.
So, yeah, important to stay visible. So one tip right now is keep in touch with your existing customers. If you are business to business, this is a business to business tip really, but you can do it B2C, but B2B is golden. You've likely got their customer contact details. Just drop them a line, ask how they are. You don't need to sell anything or do anything, just get in touch and ask how they are. I would highly recommend you do that with your customers and people in your pipeline, perhaps people that considered doing business with you just before the lockdown and have gone quiet. Just drop them a line and ask them how they are. Which brings us on to pipeline. Nicely done, Tracy. Staying visible, as Tracy said, is really important. I personally think it's been really key over the period of the lockdown. Some people have gone dark, which, well, that's a debate that people can have, but I've advised my clients, and it seems to have been successful, to stay visible. And what's been important about that is the message has to have been very tasteful, supportive. How can we help you? What can we do for you? But just maintaining that presence. And it's been about being there for when they are ready to make a buying decision. So it's not necessarily been about making a sale, but just being there for when they're ready. And moving on to the next slide, it's all about staying visible and being in that set for consideration. So I call it the Lighthouse Effect, really. Some of your communications aren't designed to make a sale. They're just designed to keep up that awareness. So email marketing is one way to do it. You might decide to do regular social media posts, public relations, even direct mail. Whatever it is, if it's regular and consistent, I call it a lighthouse effect because it just keeps going round, you just keep noticing it, but until you're actually ready to buy, you don't need it, but you know it's there. And that's why Tracy mentioned earlier on about the harmony and the consistency. You need that regular communication, and that's what builds the trust. So stay visible and keep that regular communication going.
Okay, and then the final hint and tip we've got is the plea to you, really, to don't just be noise. Talk to your consumers in a way, your customers in a way that is going to engage them. And I love this quote from Bartle, who is part of Bartle, Bogut, Hegarty, one of the biggest global advertising agencies. And he talks about communicating the totality, the combination of rational and emotional, head and heart. Lots of research around advertising says that we have to help consumers to think and feel something, rational and emotional, because although we might make rational decisions, the ultimate decision as human beings generally is an emotional one. It's following your gut. It's like it just feels right. So in that sense, when we get to the promotion part of the 4Ps and you're actually talking to consumers with all the information around your positioning and the considerations you have on why your product is relevant for them, we need to do that in a way that engages them. And talking just rational doesn't really make sense in that way. Seth Godin, a very prolific marketing writer, also talks about being noise if your contribution is not relevant at the right time, is unwelcome at the particular time you're reaching people, which is why in terms of the promotion element of the 4Ps, it's reaching them in the right way at the right time for them, so that you're not just noise, you're relevant, you're interesting, and consumers can engage with you on an emotional level as well as a rational one.
Basically, this slide is totally agreeing with what Tracy says. So just in terms of the practical way that you can do this and to make sure that you're doing this, I would suggest you have a look at your marketing and look at the statement and then think to yourself, why would the customer be bothered about that? So what? And every time you look at it, so it might say, I write marketing plans. I can write a marketing plan for you. And then you say, well, so what does that mean? And that means that I can save you time. So what does that mean? Well, that means you can help you grow my business. But for everything that every statement that you make, ask what is the benefit to the customer and drill right down to find out what the benefit is to the customer. And then how does that make them feel? Does that make them, if you can talk about feelings and emotions, they're more likely to notice that communication, because even in a business to business environment, it's people buying from people. So just because you're a business to business, don't think this doesn't apply to you, because it does. This is B2B and B2C. You need the rational argument later, because that's what we do. We notice the emotion and then we rationalize it. So you need both of those elements in your marketing mix.
Okay, and then Jo found this marvelous quote, never let a good crisis go to waste. So it's always been important for you to be creating a rapport with your customers. But this situation, this pandemic that we're in, has really elevated that. And so as Jo said, your brands can't afford to go silent, companies can't afford to go silent, because if you're forgotten about, the cost of getting those customers back is just so much higher. You need to maintain what you're doing and what consumers are seeing and hearing about you. And I think we've noticed, I saw a great video where someone had put together multiple adverts that had been on television during the 12 weeks of lockdown, and they were very samey. There were lots of visual and musical cliches, we understand you, we're with you, we're here for you. And some of that works and some of it doesn't. But very recently, KFC have hailed their return with an advert that I don't know if you've seen it, but please check it out. They've basically used all the snapshots that people have uploaded to Twitter and other social media forums, where they've tried to recreate a KFC at home. And they've basically said, we know you've tried your best, but the original is now back. They've done it with an energy, with an enthusiasm, and with a tone of voice that's very true to their brand. And that's much more engaging and it brings consumers back very quickly. And just one other example very quickly, because I know we're overrunning. Procter & Gamble, for example, said that they would never go quiet during a recession. When they see a recession coming, they actually up their spend. They've stated that again. So we're talking brands like Gillette and Pampers and Ariel. They're maintaining their mental availability, which is consumers' awareness that they're here, as well as their physical availability in store. And I wrote a quote down to say, they've said, there's a big upside here in terms of reminding consumers of the benefits they've experienced with our brands in the past and how we met their family's needs, which is why this is not the time to stop telling them that. And then their CFO has very recently tweeted, what needs must we meet in what new ways is the big question that we ask ourselves every day. So this takes us right back to the beginning where we said planning and pausing and planning are the most important things you can do. And even big companies like P&G are doing that. They're constantly thinking, so has anything changed? What's going on? Do I need to tweak my plan? Do I need to go full steam ahead? Do I need to dramatically change it because of what's been happening?
So we promised 2 easy to implement low-cost marketing ideas at the end. So the first one is to consider offering a guarantee. Now, at the moment, as I mentioned earlier, people are a little bit nervous at the moment. And in order to buy from you, people need to know you, like you, and trust you. And one way to encourage them to trust you is to offer them a guarantee. That guarantee doesn't need to be a money-back guarantee. It could be a replacement product. It could be that you'll keep providing the service until they're satisfied. But statistics show that people hardly ever actually call up and use the guarantee. But at the same time, it gives them the confidence to buy from you. So I would definitely encourage you to give it a go and consider offering a guarantee and promoting that you offer a guarantee. It's a great way to actually stay visible by saying that you offer a guarantee. So that's the first one. And the second one is, because this is about resilient Lincolnshire, I thought it'd be really good to offer something local. And I don't know whether you've heard of Google My Business. It's an easy win for local marketing. So if you're looking for local customers and you've got a website, have a look for Google My Business, because if you actually fill in all the relevant bits and do everything that Google My Business suggests that you do, it's actually a really good way to help you get to the top of the Google rankings. They kind of present a top 3 set of local businesses in what you do. So again, you can do it yourself, it's low cost, and it's a good way to make an easy win.
Okay, so our sincere apologies for slightly overrunning, but we hope you found it useful. These are the things that we want you to remember: to pause and make a plan, to really understand your business, your target market, and specifically your customers, the customers you've chosen to target. And then throughout all of this happening, you need to stay visible. And in terms of how you communicate, the key thing to remember is that emotion sells. So thank you. We're ready for any questions. There are some links on there for all the Resilient Lincolnshire page, where you can find all the talks from executive education and also the discussions, and then also the contact details for Fill the Gap. And Jo, did you want to say anything again about the Marketing Academy to remind them?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Marketing Academy walks you through the marketing planning process. It covers all the elements, from the research, the segment targeting, positioning, right through to the tactical delivery. It is normally £120, but for the month of July, if you put that code in, you will get that for free. It's also got me talking again, sorry about that, but I do talk you through the process on there about how to do it. And if you join that Facebook group that I've mentioned on there, How to Grow My Business, you'll recognise some of the graphics that you've seen, but we share lots of practical tips in there as well. That's free if you want to do that. And we also offer a free consultation if people want to do that. Which it sounds like we're giving away loads for free, which we are, but we want to help people. It's a great way of raising our profile, and the better Lincolnshire doing, the better we're all doing. So please take advantage of any of that free stuff if you'd like to.
Okay, that's
Thank
a wrap.
you very much.
Now I'm just looking at the comments to see if we've got any questions, and we don't.
No, I think we're